6 Buddhist truths that will help to end anxiety after 60. The quiet panic after 60. Let's not pretend. Getting older is a strange thing. There's a quiet shift that creeps in after 60. Not all at once and not loud like a siren. It's more like the sound of wind through old windows. You wake up one day and things feel different. Not worse, not tragic, just different. The world moves a bit faster. People talk more about their blood pressure than their big dreams. And sometimes, when the noise fades at night, there's a knot in your chest you didn't notice before. It's not exactly fear. It's not even sadness. It's something harder to name. An anxious restlessness, like your body made peace with aging, but your mind hasn't caught up. The shape of anxiety at this stage of life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been sitting on your porch, cup of tea in hand, nothing obviously wrong, and yet your heart won't stop humming like a broken refrigerator? That's what I mean. It's not about drama or breakdowns. Anxiety after 60 doesn't always roar. It whispers. It leans in close and reminds you that time is ticking, that your knees hurt, that your to-do list looks more like a bucket list these days. It taps you on the shoulder when you least expect it. Grocery shopping, visiting the doctor, reading the news. But here's the thing. We don't talk about this enough. Society loves to glorify graceful aging, but nobody explains how to handle the quiet panic that can sneak in during those long stretches of solitude. No one hands you a guidebook for the moment when you realize you've lived more years than you likely have left. And yet, that realization doesn't have to crush you. What we've been told, and what we've missed most of what we've learned about anxiety, is built around productivity, youth, or trauma. But this anxious hum that shows up at 2 a.m. and doesn't offer a clear reason, it doesn't respond to bubble baths or positive affirmations. It's deeper, it's existential. It lives in the space between your memories and your uncertainty about what's coming next. Now, maybe you've already tried the usual advice: medication, deep breathing, retirement hobbies, a good glass of wine. Maybe some of it helps. But if you're reading this, chances are you're still searching for something that feels real, something that actually helps. Not just for a minute, but for the long nights and the quiet mornings, too. That's where Buddhist wisdom comes in. Not as religion, but as a kind of ancient psychology. A gentle friend that sits beside you and says, "You're not broken, you're just human," and that's more than enough. Why Buddhism speaks louder later in life. You don't have to chant, shave your head, or burn incense to understand the value of Buddhist truths. Honestly, some of the deepest insights in Buddhism sound like things your grandparents might have whispered across the dinner table. Everything changes. The more you try to control, the more you suffer. Let go. They're simple, but not easy. Buddhist teachings aren't magic spells. They don't promise to erase fear, but they do offer a path, a way to sit with fear without letting it run the show. And for those of us past 60, that kind of peace is priceless. Because let's face it, at this stage of life, you've probably carried more grief than you expected. You've lost people, faced illnesses, watched your kids grow up and walk away into their own chaos. Maybe you retired and felt aimless, or maybe you didn't and now wonder if you missed your chance at rest. And somewhere in all that noise, you've asked, when does the worrying stop? Not fighting the mind, but understanding it. Here's something nobody tells you when you're younger. You can't fix anxiety by pushing it away. Not for long, anyway. The harder you fight it, the louder it gets. Like a child who just wants your attention, your anxious mind keeps tugging at your sleeve until you finally sit down and ask, "Okay, what is it?" Buddhism doesn't offer answers so much as tools, ways to turn toward your anxiety and listen rather than run. That's the beauty of it. It teaches you to stay, to be still, even when your mind wants to sprint. Because after 60, running isn't really the answer anymore, is it? You've earned the right to slow down. You've earned the right to feel peace, not just chase it. So let's talk about the 6 truths Buddhism offers that can actually help you feel calm again. Not like some fleeting escape, but a calm that lives in your bones. But before we get to the first truth, I want you to take a breath. Seriously. Right now, just breathe. Feel that? That's the beginning of something. Let's keep going. Truth number 1, everything changes, and that's okay. So here's the big takeaway. Everything you've loved, everything you've feared losing, it's all in motion, like clouds, like rivers, and yes, like memory. You might be thinking, well, if everything changes, what's the point of getting attached to anything at all? Good question, but Buddhism doesn't ask us not to care. It doesn't say, don't love. It says, love with open hands, because love that grips too tightly turns into suffering. Ever tried to hold water in a clenched fist? All you end up with is a mess and wet fingers. But when you hold it gently, cupped palms, soft grip, it stays a little longer. That's how we're asked to hold the moments, the people, the places we love, gently, with grace, knowing they'll shift. That ache you feel, it's grief, and it's sacred. Let's call it what it is, grief. This slow, aching, ongoing grief that shows up after 60, it's real. And it doesn't always come from loss through death. Sometimes it's the grief of not being who you used to be, of no longer being needed in the same way, of missing the pace of your old life. And yet, grief isn't something to fix. It's something to honor, because it means you cared, you loved, you lived deeply enough that change actually hurts. That's not weakness. That's evidence of a life richly lived. There's a kind of unexpected beauty in grieving. Not the dramatic, sobbing kind, though that has its place too. I mean the quiet moments, flipping through old photos, sitting alone in a room you used to share, walking by a street where your kids once rode their bikes. That's sacred ground, and if you sit with it long enough, not push it away, not try to stuff it down, it softens. The pain doesn't vanish, but it becomes lighter, like something you can carry instead of something that carries you. That's the magic of accepting change. But I miss the old me. You know what? That's fair. Of course you miss the old you, the one who could stay up late without aching knees, the one who remembered names faster, the one who could carry groceries without mapping out an escape plan halfway up the stairs. But missing the old you doesn't mean you can't love the new one. There's a strength in you now that younger you didn't have. A calm, a knowing. You've seen things, felt things, lost and rebuilt things. You're not just older, you're seasoned, like a cast iron skillet that gets better the more it's used. That's not decay, that's depth. The challenge is in letting go of the image of who you think you were supposed to be at this point, and embracing who you actually are. Someone still breathing, still growing, still capable of presence and joy, even if that joy looks different now. The gentle reframe. Life isn't a straight line. Let me tell you something quietly radical. Life doesn't wind down after 60. That's a lie we've been sold by commercials and retirement planning brochures. It bends, it shifts, but it doesn't end until it ends. If you're reading this, you're still here, still learning, still searching. That's not the end, that's still the middle. In fact, in Buddhism, they often say, the day you wake up to truth is the day your real life begins. So maybe, just maybe, this stage of life isn't about decline. Maybe it's about returning to yourself, to simplicity, to what matters. Maybe the noise of the first 60 years was just the warm-up act. Now's the time for the real music. When you let change in, anxiety slips out. Here's the strange irony. The more you resist change, the more anxious you feel. Think about it. If you're clinging to how things used to be, every new wrinkle, every technology update, every silent phone feels like a threat, like the universe is taking something from you. But when you accept that change is constant, expected even, you stop bracing for loss. You start looking for meaning within the change. That's not just philosophical fluff, it's deeply practical. Imagine waking up tomorrow and saying, okay, everything is going to change. Let's see what it brings. You're not blindsided anymore. You're ready. And that readiness, that's peace in motion. Anxiety loves to live in the gap between what is and what we wish would stay the same. But once you close that gap, not by fixing it, but by softening into it, the panic has less room to grow. Let that sink in. A tiny practice you can try. Here's something simple, not a ritual, not a trick, just a moment of awareness. Every morning when you wake up, say this quietly to yourself. Today, things will change, and I will stay open. That's it. You'll be surprised how grounding it is, especially when life does what life does. Change, interrupt, shift. This practice doesn't erase fear, but it makes room for courage. Truth number 2. Suffering comes from clinging, not from pain. Let's get honest for a second. Growing older hurts, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes both. That morning stiffness isn't just a myth, and the emotional aches, the ones no one else can see, they can be just as heavy. But here's the thing, pain and suffering aren't the same. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, surprisingly, is negotiable. Now, I know that might sound strange, maybe even a little offensive if you've been carrying a hard burden lately. But stick with me, because what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago still holds water, maybe even more so after 60. The example of the 2 arrows. There's a classic parable from Buddhist teachings that goes like this. Imagine you're struck by an arrow. It hurts, obviously. That's the first arrow, the unavoidable pain of life. But then, instead of tending to the wound, you shoot yourself with a second arrow. Your reaction. This shouldn't be happening to me. Why is this so unfair? I can't handle this. That second arrow, that suffering, it's not from the wound itself, but from the story you build around it. See the difference? Pain is what life does. Suffering is what we do with it. And here's the good news. We can stop shooting that second arrow at any age. You can't control what happens, but you can control the grip. Let's talk about control. Because if there's one thing that makes anxiety worse after 60, it's realizing just how little control we really have. You can't stop your kids from making mistakes. You can't stop your body from aging. You can't stop time from moving forward like an old train with no brakes. But here's what you can control, how tightly you hold on. We cling to expectations, to identities, to routines that gave us comfort for decades. But the tighter the grip, the deeper the cut when things change. It's like grabbing a rope during a fall. The instinct is to cling tighter, but that only burns your palms more. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means loosening the grip, so you can breathe again, so your heart can rest. What are you still holding that's making you tired? Let's pause for a moment and really ask this. What are you clinging to that's making you anxious? Maybe it's a version of yourself that existed 20 years ago, or the idea that your adult children should call more often, or the belief that slowing down means becoming irrelevant. Maybe it's regret, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's the fear of being alone. Whatever it is, be honest. No judgment here, because naming it is the first step to releasing it. You can't drop what you won't admit you're holding, and most of us, we've been gripping the same old fears for decades. So long they've started to feel like part of who we are, but they're not. They're habits of mind, and habits can change. Even now. Especially now. The trap of the should-have mind. Ever find yourself thinking in shoulds? I should be stronger. I should have saved more. I should have said something when I had the chance. That's the language of clinging. The mind is trying to rewrite the past, thinking it will help. But it doesn't. It only tightens the knot. And here's the subtle truth. You can't heal while you're arguing with reality. The past is not a problem to solve. It's a place you once stood. That's all. You don't have to keep living there. And if you need permission to stop punishing yourself for old decisions, consider this it. You did the best you could with what you had at the time. That's true for almost all of us. Forgive the old you. She's exhausted. She just wants to rest. Here's a little practice you can use. Next time you catch yourself in a loop of worry or guilt or frustration, try this. Pause. Close your eyes if you can. Then say, "This is the first arrow. I won't shoot the second." That simple. Naming it helps you catch the mind before it spins. It helps you feel the pain without layering it with resistance and fear and should-haves. It brings you back to the present, and the present, as simple as it sounds, is usually a whole lot gentler than the mind would have you believe. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a woman named Teresa, 68, retired school principal, tough as nails. She'd spent her whole life managing things, people, problems, plans. She was good at it. She liked being the one in charge. Then her husband passed. Unexpected, quick, and for the first time in her life, she couldn't fix it. I remember her telling me, "I didn't cry at the funeral, but I screamed into a pillow the next morning." That was the first arrow, but the months that followed, that was the second, and the third, and the fourth. Because every time the pain came, she told herself, "I should be over this. I should be stronger. I should have seen it coming." When she finally stopped saying should, something changed. She still missed him. She still hurt. But she no longer blamed herself for feeling it. That's when the healing began. Not from fixing anything, just from letting the pain be pain, without building a prison around it. Truth number 3. Real peace comes from presence, not from planning. Let's be honest. Most of us were taught to plan our way to peace. Save enough, schedule carefully, stay ahead of the game, and eventually you will relax, right? Except that's not what happens. You plan the trip and stress over the details. You retire and worry if the money will last. You survive the storm and brace yourself for the next one. It's like chasing a mirage. You keep thinking peace is out there, in the next plan, the next fix, the next solution. But the finish line keeps moving, and it's exhausting. The illusion of control. Here's the sneaky part. Planning makes us feel safe, like if we just stay 3 steps ahead, nothing will blindside us. But the truth? Control is kind of a scam. You can have the best retirement strategy, the healthiest diet, the strongest faith, and still things go sideways. Your body changes. People leave. The world turns faster than your calendar can keep up with. And when you've spent a lifetime organizing everything, kids, bills, birthdays, appointments. It's jarring when life stops cooperating. So what's left? Presence. Not because it's trendy, but because it's real. And frankly, it's the only place peace has ever lived. Anxiety lives in the future. Peace lives in the now. You've probably noticed this before. Most of our anxiety, it's not about what's actually happening right now. It's about what might happen next. What if the test results come back bad? What if I end up alone? What if I forget something important? That's future talk, hypothetical stress, like trying to solve math problems from a class you're not even in yet. And yet, we do it constantly. Meanwhile, the present moment, this breath, this chair, this small piece of sky outside your window, it's not threatening you. It's not asking anything of you. It's just here, and it's quiet. Presence isn't about being happy all the time. Let's clear something up. Being present doesn't mean you have to enjoy every moment. It just means you meet each moment honestly. You don't have to slap a smile on grief. You don't have to be grateful for hip pain. You just have to be with it without adding mental commentary, future worries, or old regrets. Presence is neutral ground. It's where the mind stops arguing and the heart catches its breath. And you know what's wild? When you stop trying to escape the moment, you often find it's not nearly as bad as your brain made it out to be. Try this. The 5 sense check-in. Next time you feel your mind spinning, here's a quick way to anchor yourself back to now. 1. What's one thing you can see? The light hitting the countertop, the curve of your hands, a plant on the windowsill. 2. What's one thing you can hear? Maybe a clock ticking, the sound of your own breath, a car in the distance. 3. What's one thing you can feel? Your feet against the floor, your clothes on your shoulders, the chair supporting you. 4. What's one thing you can smell? Coffee, soap, paper, even the scent of quiet. 5. What's one thing you can taste? Even if it's just the aftertaste of tea or the flavor of your mouth, it counts. This simple practice, done in 60 seconds, pulls the mind back from the future and into the now. And in that now, you might just find a little bit of peace waiting. The gift of slowness. Here's something people don't talk about enough. Slowness is not a curse. It's a gift, especially after 60. Our culture is addicted to speed, fast results, fast news, fast healing. But peace doesn't come fast. It comes from noticing, from breathing, from slowing down enough to actually be where you are. In fact, many spiritual traditions see aging not as decline, but as awakening. Because the noise starts to fade, the world stops expecting so much of you, and you finally have a little room to reflect. If you've ever sat on a porch just listening to birds, or stared out the window without checking your phone, you've already tasted what presence feels like. It's not flashy, but it's sacred, and it might be the most powerful medicine you've got. A small story from a quiet morning. Frank, 72, widowed, lives alone in a modest apartment in Portland. No pets, no big hobbies, just a slow life. Every morning he makes the same tea, Earl Grey with a touch of milk, sits in the same chair, opens the same window, and just listens. When I asked him once if he ever got bored, he smiled. Boredom, he said, is a young man's anxiety. At my age, I've got nothing to chase. I just sit and let the day come to me. That's presence. Not fancy, not loud, just enough. Truth number 4, you are not your thoughts, and that's a good thing. Let me ask you something you might not have asked yourself lately. Have your thoughts ever scared you? Not because you're dangerous or broken, but because they come in fast, out of nowhere, and sound nothing like the person you know yourself to be. You're brushing your teeth, and suddenly your mind whispers, "What if I'm dying?" You're driving, and it chimes in, "What if I lose everything?" You're sitting at the dinner table with your family, and there it is again. What's the point of all this? You didn't invite these thoughts. You didn't plan them. They just showed up, like an unannounced guest who walks in, puts their feet on your table, and starts critiquing your life. Here's the truth most people don't learn until they're well into their 60s or 70s. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they pass through, and that space, it's still whole, still wise, still deeply okay. Where do thoughts even come from? Ever wondered that? Because half the time it feels like thoughts just float in from some back alley in the mind. A memory, a fear, a weird commercial jingle from 1983, and then, bam, it's running the show. The problem is, we tend to believe our thoughts, all of them, even the loud, ridiculous, anxiety-fueled ones. But believing every thought is like trusting every ad on the internet. Some are useful, most are noise. Buddhism has a gentle reminder here. Thoughts are like clouds, they pass. The sky remains. In other words, your mind isn't broken, it's just busy. And just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it deserves your full attention. Let it pass. Like weather, the spiral of overthinking and how it starts quietly. Let's talk about overthinking for a second, because if anxiety had a favorite hobby, that would be it. Here's how it usually starts. One thought pops up, maybe something innocent. I feel a little tired. Then it mutates. What if it's something serious? Then I should probably go to the doctor. But what if they find something? Then I can't afford another scare. This could ruin everything. Now your heart is racing, your chest feels tight, and nothing even happened yet. Sound familiar? That's the thing about thoughts. They're not just mental. They trigger your whole body, your breathing, your posture, your emotions. It's like one bad apple in your brain just spoiled the whole day. But the second you remember, this is just a thought, it loses power. It doesn't vanish, no, but it stops running the show. Meditation isn't just for monks. Now I know meditation gets tossed around a lot, and not always helpfully. It's not about sitting like a statue or chanting Sanskrit. It's not about clearing your mind, which frankly, no one can do perfectly. It's about seeing your thoughts without attaching to them. Here's how it works. Simply, 1. You sit. Doesn't have to be fancy. A chair works fine. 2. You breathe. Just notice it. Don't try to control it. 3. A thought comes up. Maybe about lunch. Maybe about your past. Doesn't matter. 4. You notice it and then let it go. No judgment. No fighting. Just letting it float off like a balloon. This is training, not for your muscles, but for your awareness. And over time, it builds a gentle superpower, the ability to not react to every single thing your mind throws at you. And at 60, 70, 80, that kind of inner peace is pure gold. Real talk. Some thoughts will hurt. That's okay. Let's not pretend every thought is harmless. Some of them hurt. Thoughts about loss, about your own aging, about regrets, about people you miss. That's part of being human. But even painful thoughts don't define you. They visit, they pass, and they can't erase your kindness, your presence, your worth. In Buddhism, there's a story about a second arrow. The first arrow is pain. It hits, and you feel it. But the second arrow, that's the one we fire at ourselves. Why am I feeling this? I shouldn't be so weak. I'm losing it. The teaching is simple. You can't always stop the first arrow, but you don't have to shoot the second. You can meet hard thoughts with softness, with patience, even with humor sometimes. And slowly you stop believing everything your mind tells you. A moment with Clara, 68, shared something beautiful with me. I used to lie awake worrying about all the things I hadn't done, all the things I might forget. Then I started talking back to my thoughts, like old friends who sometimes lie to me. I say, "Thanks for showing up, but I'm resting now." And most nights, they leave me alone. You hear that? That's wisdom speaking, not fighting thoughts, not running from them, just recognizing them for what they are. Passing visitors, not permanent residents. Truth number 6, you are still needed, even now, especially now. Here's something you may not hear often enough, especially after you hit 60. You still matter, not just in a sentimental, you've lived a good life kind of way. You matter right now, in real, tangible ways, and you know what? Maybe even more than ever, when the world starts to look past you. There's this strange shift that happens as we age. People stop looking you in the eye the same way. The cashier talks to your daughter instead of you. The doctor explains things a little too slowly, like you're not quite sharp anymore. It's subtle, but it stings. And then the question starts to creep in, quietly but persistently. Am I still relevant? It's a deeply human question, and anxiety feeds on it. Because when you feel invisible, or like your purpose has passed, it's hard not to spiral into fear, sadness, or even bitterness. But here's the truth Buddhism reminds us of. The value of a candle isn't in its flame, it's in the warmth it gives to others. And your warmth, your story, your wisdom, that's needed more than ever. What the younger generations actually crave. We live in a culture obsessed with speed, youth, and fresh ideas. But under all that noise, do you know what younger people are really looking for? Perspective. Someone who's seen things they haven't, who's weathered storms, who doesn't panic over every new headline or every bump in the road. Someone who can sit across the table and say, "You'll get through this." That's you. And whether you realize it or not, you carry stories that no one else can tell, lessons no one else can teach, a calming presence that can't be Googled or rushed. You're not just a chapter in someone else's life. You might be the anchor. The grandmother in the garden. There's a Zen temple in Japan with a small garden out back. Visitors often miss it. It's tended by an 83-year-old woman named Sayo. She doesn't lead ceremonies. She doesn't teach Dharma talks. She doesn't speak much English, but she shows up every morning, rain, snow, or sun, and carefully removes weeds from between the stones. When asked why she does it, she smiles and says simply, "Because this path helps others walk." That's it. She tends the path quietly, gently, so others can move through with more ease. Isn't that what most of us hope for? To leave things a little clearer, a little softer than we found them. You don't need a spotlight to be important. You just need presence. Your wisdom isn't obsolete, it's essential. Think about everything you've learned in 6 or 7 decades of living. How to endure heartache, how to love people even when they change, how to survive long nights and wake up anyway. That's not just nice to have, that's gold. And if you share even some of that through conversation, letters, cooking, storytelling, volunteering, mentorship, or just being someone who listens, you're lighting fires you'll never even see the end of. The world is hungry for that kind of depth, not fast answers, not flashy solutions, but steady souls. People like you. Try this, legacy letters. Here's a small, beautiful practice to bring this home. Take a quiet afternoon, make some tea, and write a letter, not to your younger self, but to someone younger now, a grandchild, a niece, a former student, a neighbor, anyone you care about. Tell them what you've learned, what you wish someone had told you at their age, what matters most, what you've let go of, and what's been worth holding on to. It doesn't have to be poetic or perfect, just real. Then mail it or hand it to them, or save it for the right moment. You may never know how deeply it lands, but trust me, it will. A gentle closing. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with this. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not done. You are a breathing, feeling, deeply human being, carrying decades of life, love, mistakes, grace, and quiet strength. And while anxiety may still visit now and then, it no longer gets to take the front seat. Because now you've remembered what Buddhism has whispered all along. Nothing is permanent, but peace is possible. You are not your mind. You are the one who sees it. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means living lighter. Slowing down doesn't mean fading away. It means becoming more present. And your presence at this age is not less than, it's more. So take the walk. Write the letter. Share the story. Rest your thoughts. You're still here. And that's enough. That's more than enough.